Is this the Model Y rival we've all been waiting for? This is the Skoda Enyaq, a fully electric medium-sized SUV that comes from Europe. Now it's starting with a coupe SUV just like we have here, but this is going to be competing against an established set of other competitors. But there's a lot to like about this car, and in this video we're going to find out all about it. Now, like I said, the Enyaq is coming to Australia initially in this coupe SUV format. It probably won't be to everyone's taste, but hey, it looks a little bit different to what else is out there on the market, and there is going to be a bit more of a wagon-style SUV variant coming in the future. We don't know when yet, but we can expect it to arrive. But the interesting thing for me about this car is the starting price. This is the entry-level sport line that we have here, and it's priced from $69,990 plus on-road costs, which puts it in a pretty interesting position, I think, in the market. Now, another thing to note here is that this vehicle has actually been on sale in Europe for around 4 years. But the good news for Australia is we've got the updated model. So we've got a bit more tech, we've got more driving range, we've got faster charging speeds as well. This is a better vehicle just about overall. And I've got to say, in terms of pricing, it is in the right area. So the range starts with this single motor rear wheel drive setup. Don't forget, this uses the Volkswagen Group MEB modular electric platform. But if you want something a little bit more spicy, go for the RS at the top of the range. That goes for $83,990 plus on-road costs, but that adds more power via an electric motor at the front, plus a lot of other gear. The Skoda Enyaq will arrive in Australian showrooms by December 2024 and comes with a starting price of $69,990 plus on-road costs. This is for the entry-level sport line specification, which does have a decent amount of standard equipment included. There's things like a 13-inch infotainment display, electric driver's seat adjustment and memory, heated front seats and matrix LED headlights. At the top of the tree is RS specification, which gets everything as standard, but also an all-wheel drive powertrain with 2 electric motors and 250 kilowatts of output. This makes it the most powerful production Skoda to date. This also gets an RS style exterior, lowered suspension and an exclusive Mamba green color. The Enyaq is a mid-size electric SUV which measures in at 4.65 meters long and just over 1.6 meters tall. And while there is a more wagon-shaped variant of the Enyaq available overseas, Australia will initially only get this sleeker and swoopier coupe SUV style. Both Sportline and RS Enyaqs have the same modular style, 82 kilowatt hour nickel cobalt manganese battery pack, which can allow for the 12 separate cells to be removed and repaired individually if necessary. The RS specification does have increased performance, which knocks the 0 to 100 km/h dash down from 6.7 seconds to 5.4 seconds. However, the claimed range does drop down as well. That goes to 530 kilometers on the same WLTP cycle. So here's the interior of the Enyaq, and don't forget, I'm in the base Sportline model at the moment, so under 70 grand plus on roads. And I think overall this interior is maybe surprisingly conventional for an electric car. You've got things like Teslas, you've got EV6s that go for a little bit modern of a style and a bit more experimental. This is perhaps a bit more conventional, I suppose, and familiar to other people who have been driving regular cars, not electric cars, over the years. Now, we do have some advantages here from the electric platform. We've got a good amount of space going on. Underneath this center console, there's a big storage bin actually, which you probably can't see from this angle at the moment, but it's quite handy. You could fit bags and purses and things under there and that sort of thing. We've got a big storage area here. There's a wireless charging pad tucked in there. And typical of Skoda vehicles, there is some great attention to detail in terms of flexibility around the place. So 2 cup holders here, they're actually adjustable. We can shift those around for a smaller cup holder or a larger one. And then this center bin here, because there's no transmission tunnel in this car, there's actually a lot of room. You've got sort of layers upon layers in here. It's all removable as well, but that's quite a big storage space actually. Now, one thing to note about this car, I think, is that the materials are, I'm not going to call them basic, I suppose, but it is mostly black overall, right? We've got some little chrome and shiny highlights around the place. What Skoda have done well, I think, they've mixed up the materials and the textures just to make this feel a bit more interesting, I suppose, but there's still a lot of hard and basic plastic around the place. So when you look at some other competitors, you might have a bit more of an interesting interior experience, but build quality does feel good and practicality is good as well. And that's very important, I think, for where this car sits. Infotainment, this is a new generation setup here. It's a nice big display. You get all the features, and I do like the shortcuts that Skoda have added recently across the top here, just to give the setup a little bit more ease of use, I suppose, especially when you don't have too many buttons going on. There's a run of them down here for driving modes, parking assistance and climate controls and that sort of thing. But it does work reasonably well in this setup at the moment. And I also don't mind this small digital instrument cluster in front here as well. You get larger instrument clusters in other vehicles, absolutely. However, this one, I think it doesn't impede your view. It lets you concentrate on driving, and it does give you all the important information up here. So things like navigation, obviously battery usage and all of that sort of thing, it's covered well. And in higher specs, or if you option up the sport line, you can get a heads-up display with augmented reality and all of that kind of jazz. But let's have a look in the second row as well, because that's an important feature. Now here's the second row of the Enyaq, and first things first, I'm around 180 centimeters tall. This is my driving position up front here, and as you can see, legroom is quite good in this vehicle. It's another thing about electric cars these days. SUVs, you're getting a little bit more length and space inside the cabin these days, and this flat floor does pay dividends. Comfort is pretty good overall. This coupe SUV is a bit tight for headroom, I would say. People who are taller than I would start to perhaps be touching the roof there a little bit. One reason why I might prefer the wagon variant of this SUV when it comes. And another thing to note as well is this glass roof. It's got a real wow factor about it, right? It's huge. It's got a lot of presence in the cabin, and it lets in a lot of light, obviously. But hot summer's day, if you've got a dark coloured Enyaq, it's going to get pretty warm in this cabin. So expect to use probably a bit of battery power to actually cool this cabin down on those warmer days. But the seats are quite raked and comfortable, I have to say. I've got good thigh support, there's plenty of room for my feet, and there are some cool features going on here as well. So there's no transmission tunnel in the middle here, but you do have this sort of storage caddy, which is cool. It's actually got some pop-out rubbery cup holders, which works well, and you can also take it out and, well, not chuck it away, but you can put it away, I suppose, if you don't want that in the car, and just free up a bit of legroom in there. That is a clever feature. And also, you've got two USB-C power outlets there. You've got air vents as well. There's a pop-down armrest here with cup holders, but also you can open this hatch here. So maybe you do skiing, or maybe just picking up a bit of 2x4 from Bunnings, whatever it might be. There is a bit of extra flexibility there, but once again, this does feel pretty good in the back. We do have these sunshades, which are a great feature for family buyers, I think, although a lot of sun's going to be coming up from that roof anyway when the kids are asleep. Once again, it does feel pretty good. The materials are the same as up front. Maybe they don't have the massive amount of wow factor that you get in other vehicles, but it feels well made. It feels solid as well. So if you're looking at the coupe SUV, you might be a little bit worried about boot space. Let's have a look and see what we've got here. Electric tailgate is always nice, and the claimed litrage in this vehicle is actually 570 litres, which is a big number, I have to say. Now obviously that wagon will have a bit more of a squared off back here, so you will have effectively more space if you get rid of the luggage blind and that sort of thing, but this is still quite usable, I think, in terms of what you have. Now a couple of things to note here. Underneath this floor, you do have some additional storage in there. There's no spare wheel in this. You do have a tyre repair kit. That's par of the course, I think, for most electric cars these days. And there's even a bit more room if you pull this floor up once again. So that's pretty good. Also, one thing to note, which I do really like about this Enyaq, and it's not the case with every other electric vehicle out there, it comes with the cables as standard fit. You're not paying extra for those. That is cool. And they come in a bag, they're in a spot, so they're always in there. If you're out and about and you need to charge this car up, they are ready to go. So yes, it's not going to be the most practical choice overall, but I think this is still pretty good for what it is. Now I'm currently in the most affordable Enyaq in the range. That is Sportline without the $6,000 option pack you can choose, which throws in, most importantly, I think, adaptive damping. We've got regular rolled springs and shocks here with no adaptive ability. I've got to say though, this thing still does feel pretty good. It feels reasonably light. The car hides its weight quite well. It's light through the steering, responsive, and it does feel a little bit nimble through the corners, but once you start pushing a bit harder and a bit harder, that weight comes into play. And I think it's just the old adage that tyres can only offer as much lateral grip these days. And when a vehicle has a lot of weight, yes, the weight is all down low, but once the tyres are pushed beyond that limit there, you just get that understeering feeling. It tells you you're probably going a little bit too hard, but up to a regular point, and for the taste of most drivers, I think, this thing is actually a little bit fun to punt around the place. We've got the base powertrain here, 210 kilowatts through the rear axle. That's punchy enough, I think, for most cases. It's not a scintillatingly fast car. And of course, you can go to the RS with 2 electric motors. There's an extra one up front there, and then you've got more power overall, 250 kilowatts overall. In fact, that makes it Skoda's most powerful production car on record. And well, it's not like an EV6 GT, it's not like an Ioniq 5N, it's not like an MG4X Power that is outright a little bit ridiculous in terms of its speed, but it's potent enough, I think. And I think for the driving enthusiast amongst us, they will lean towards that one because, number one, you get more power, but having that extra driven wheel at the front there does help it come out of a corner with a little bit more composure than this rear-wheel drive model does when you're starting to push it a little bit hard. Now, the ride quality of this Enyaq is pretty good overall. I do like it. Even in this most basic mode here, it handles bumps quite well. It doesn't seem to get unsettled. We've had a couple of mid-corner bumps on this test route, which has been a good challenge, by the way. And you do get a little bit of bump steer at times, but I think any car would get that when we've been sort of hammering through a corner a little bit and we've had a pretty big pothole halfway through. Now, there's a growing range of electric SUVs coming to the Australian market over the next 12 to 18 months. And if you want to see what's on sale, you should head to Drive Marketplace and check out the listings there. Now, optioning up the Sport line or going to the RS does get you adaptive damping, which you can control through the selection of driving modes you have here. And there is an additional selectable driving mode where you can dial in your dampers through 15 different modes, which is pretty cool. You can slide this bar up and down. It's kind of like that volume control there to see where you prefer things. You can also do the throttle control, of course, the stability control and climate control in this vehicle to get it to where you want it. Now, that does add a nice additional breadth of capability to the Enyaq. It's pretty good without it, I have to say. There are some cars that really depend on having adaptive dampers to work, but this isn't one of them. You can get away without it, but at the same time, it's a nice thing to have. And even in its most stiff mode, the most extreme setting you can have those dampers on, it doesn't feel too stiff overall. It's not actually a massive range of difference you get. It doesn't go from Ranger Raptor to 911 GT3 RS, for example. It sort of just goes a bit stiff and a little bit soft. All the modes in between, you could probably live without 10 of them, to be honest with you. 3 to 5 might be enough, but it's nice to have, I think. And with a big 85 kilowatt hour battery underneath us here, you do get solid driving ranges. We haven't been able to do a thorough test of the driving capability in terms of range of this Enyaq during this test loop, but we're getting a little bit of an indication of efficiency of this car. Now, while I'm driving along here and waiting for an overtaking opportunity, can I just ask you to please make sure you're subscribed to Drive on YouTube, and while you're at it, give us a thumbs up. It'd be much appreciated. We've been driving either uphill or downhill and not much in between. So downhill, I was seeing numbers as good as 11 kilowatt hours per 100, which is just because we were regenning so much. And now we're going back uphill. That's starting to climb up a little bit. Currently, it's indicated at about 17.7, but I will do a bit more of an update on the final number in the written review of this Enyaq. But let's see how we go there, and we'll get a more thorough idea of this vehicle and we get one to road test over the longer term. Overall, this Enyaq does feel very resolved and composed overall, and I suppose that shouldn't be too much of a surprise because this is one of the best-selling SUV BEV, so battery electric SUVs in Europe. I think it's number 4 on that list, and it's using the latest and greatest of Volkswagen Group's modular electric platform, and there's been untold sums of money poured into this car, which will be effectively used amongst a bunch of different makes and models within the Volkswagen Group range. But in this application and on Australian roads at the moment, it does feel quite well sorted. Well, overall, this Enyaq, I think, is a really solid performer across the board. There's a growing list of competitors in this part of the world, and you can find others that have a bit more performance over here. Maybe you've got more party tricks or tech and features over there. But in terms of being solid, in terms of every sort of area, I think this is pretty good overall. There's enough room inside for a family. This boot setup on the coupe SUV, it's probably big enough for most tastes, but others will prefer to wait for the wagon style when it arrives. But I've got to say, this Enyaq, it does all of the right things. But of course, there's a lot of competitors here. Model Y, EV6, Ioniq 5, the list goes on, and there's plenty of new brands coming into this space over the next 12 months or so. So let me know in the comments below, what do you reckon? Would you choose this Enyaq, or would you go for something else? Hit me up in the comments, and as always, thanks for watching.